Today we're going to talk about what is going on with big tech. Long story short, people are getting fired. Amazon fired, Salesforce fired, Facebook fired, Google also fired. Every single tech company that I know is firing left and right. I have a lot of friends, developers, business people, salespeople, fired. What the hell is going on? It's pretty self-explanatory in my opinion. During COVID, people overhired. There was a lot of demand for workers, especially in the developer sector, because there's a lot of growth, a lot of cash in the air. Companies are going crazy growth phase. Companies that shouldn't have grown were growing, but they weren't really producing anything. COVID, additionally with work from home, sorry for the blunt truth, but caused people not really to work. But this was elongated for quite some time because I think a lot of people refused to believe that. They were okay with it because they were all in the same game. Managers realized they weren't really working. People under them, they weren't really working. People above them, they weren't really working. And it was a whistleblower situation where everyone didn't want to admit each other wasn't working because they were also benefiting from not working. I have personal account of this on a individual level and also people around me who simply just didn't work. Some of them continue to not really work. I don't really understand how the economy is still rolling to a certain degree, and I'm not surprised that a recession is coming because nothing really is being produced and nothing is really making money, and yet people are still getting paid. I'm actually wondering / expecting more people to be fired. I don't think the worst is yet to come. I would go as far as to say a lot of organizations could probably survive with maybe even half of what they have now and still be fine. I think a lot of especially dev-heavy organizations or big tech companies are recognizing that one engineer can probably do better work than 5 engineers if you hire a good enough one that is dedicated to crafts, isn't hiding behind the Zoom screen, and is actually getting work done. Obviously, personal anecdote, personal accounts, but I've talked to friends who work at big tech companies, and I ask them, what do you do, or / how much do you work? And they say, oh, today I work 30 minutes, or tomorrow I just don't feel like I'm working. It's not even in just big tech. I've had professional services friends, lawyers, bankers, a little harder to hide, but even sometimes bankers who say work from home has changed the game and I'm not really working that much and I'm only working X amount of hours tomorrow and I'm not even working for those hours. And they're getting paid huge amounts of money, like unheard of amounts of money with beautiful packages, benefits. You don't even have to come in, hybrid. Are you surprised that these people are getting fired? I'm not. I think it was an inevitable. There's more to come. And it was a weird phase, the COVID benefit era, the COVID honey era, where people aren't going to get that anymore. The power is returning to employers. There was an inflated sense of employment necessary, kiss butt, where companies had to be nice to workers because workers didn't want to work. Workers had a higher barrier to entry in terms of skill. But now, after the COVID era, there's an explosion of boot camp people that have tons of coding experience that aren't really enough to make that big tech. So people can choose who to hire to a certain degree. All these big tech companies overhired. So now they have an access pool of people that they're going to let go. People who are just graduating or have been laid off are now not only competing with people that are also laid off / are inexperienced, they're competing with the best of the best. The Twitter engineers, the Facebook engineers, the Google engineers, the Amazon engineers, and their respective sales strategy ops folks that have been there for a bit, but not enough to retain manager positions. It's a scary world out there. I've had many friends who have been unable to find employment for a long time, even though they're very qualified, were stars during their college years and got great jobs, but they were laid off not at their fault, but because there were organizational changes. And now they are competing with people that have 3, 4, 5, 6 more years of experience than them who are asking now for the same wages. Of course, they're going to get hired before them. One prediction that I make as a startup person is that this year is going to be a return to employer power, and 2, a good year for startups to sweep up this talent at relatively cheap prices. I'm going to sound sinister when I say this, but I think that's the reality. There's a weird balance between startups and big tech, where big tech obviously has the resources, better name value, probably bigger compensation packages, especially on the cash front. But now startups have the power to use the cash that they raised prior. They have probably bigger budgets per person because they are at their own disposal as opposed to meeting shareholder expectations or needing to forecast out longer. Long story short, I think startups now also have great hiring power, and there's a lot of dev resources, ops resources, sales resources, brand partnership resources that have been hired from these big tech companies that are now rushing out into the job availability market that perhaps wants a better opportunity or cooler opportunity to make a difference that's better than big tech. That's all to say. I'm very thankful to be in a good spot at a startup company, relatively well funded. I feel a lot for my friends who are not doing so well, but at the same time, I think it's a good wake up call for people to actually work and put in the hours that they are getting paid for. I hope that it brings back somewhat of a responsibility culture, but also not a toxic workplace culture where people are getting worked to death. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I will see you guys next time. Let's go.